So the book that Anne was caught reading in class was Ben-Hur. And Ben-Hur was written in 1880, so 20, 30 years before Anne of Green Gables was written. So because Anne of Green Gables takes place over a decade, um, we've already had 3 years go past, and the timeline is speeding up, and we had almost a full year go by in this chapter. So almost a full year went by in this chapter. It started in November, it ended in May. So almost a full year passed during this chapter. So 4 years have passed essentially so far in this, or I guess 3 years have passed so far in this book. And so Ben Hur would have been a new hot book then. It was Ben Hur was a bestseller. It got made into a movie. It got made into two movies. The second one was remade in 1959 and is just continuously showed. It's kind of a tradition that they play it on Easter. So on Easter they play this movie Ben Hur, and it's famous for the chariot race. I mean, the chariot race is the big thing that everyone remembers about Ben Hur. And so you have all of these people racing in chariots. And as I said, it's exciting. You have Ben Hur and his nemesis Masala, and they're just racing and racing and racing, and all sorts of things happen. It's exciting. Um, I've heard that when they made the first Ben Hur movie, that a charioteer or a stuntman doing charioteering was killed as part of it because back in the 20s and 30s, people were getting killed left and right making movies, and no one really cared, which is tragic. Um,
Oh, you're laughing.
yeah, Lolly says it's tragic, and that's why I'm laughing. And yeah, yeah. Um, Life is, yeah. Anyway, uh, Ben Hur is the subtitle. It's Ben Hur, a story of the Christ, and it is a narrative that runs parallel to the Bible. So the main character, Judah Ben Hur, Judah is his first name. Ben Hur, the Ben prefix in Hebrew is son of. So you have Judah Ben Hur, and Kirk and Fitz serve the same sort of things in English, or at least used to, because you have so and so Fitzwilliams or Kirkpatrick, and it was originally Patrick's son, or William's son. Um, but Ben is like that in Hebrew. Um, Beth is daughter, but so if you see Beth Israel Hospital or whatever, it's daughter of Israel. So it's like this is so it's a kinship relationship there. Anyway, Ben Hur shows up. His life kind of follows along with Christ's, where it's like Jesus goes this way and Ben Hur goes that way, and Ben Hur has some adventures and then comes back, and then he sees the Sermon on the Mount, and then he goes off and he does other things, and he sees the crucifixion. And so the two of them, just their lives just kind of bump into each other. Um, Gilbert and Anne, uh, yeah, Gilbert is now pointedly ignoring Anne, which, she deserves. And she realized that she deserves. And now she's starting to have feelings for him, but he's like totally ignoring her. And she takes this out on some helpless other person by just ignoring him. So it's silliness. It's drama for the sake of drama. Such things are best avoided. Um, there's one thing that they mentioned, how build your character early on, because by the time you're 20s, it's fixed. There's actually been some neuroscience about this where they've studied brains and development, and your brain continues to develop until your mid 20s. So who you are at 25 is pretty much who you will always be. But um, yeah, which means that people who are in their teens and 20s, even though they may seem like adults, aren't as fixed as adults and have a tendency to make poor decisions, which is why rental car companies don't rent to anyone under 25. Though if you ever need to rent a car under 25, U-Haul has pickups. And U-Haul is much less discriminating about who they rent to. So, if you ever need to rent a car, you can rent a pickup truck or a van from U-Haul before you're 21 or before you're 25. Um, yeah, it's kind of wacky, but uh, that's a useful loophole. Taking the Queen's class and wants to be a teacher, which could be a good vocation for her. Perhaps she should write a novel about a redheaded. There's a common trope where authors kind of write themselves into the stories, or write stories about a fictionalized version of themselves. There was a TV series called Bones, and it was based on a series of books. And the series of books was written by a forensic anthropologist, which is what the Bones character is. And Bones's character in the story wrote books with a fictional version of herself, which was the name of the author. So here you have the author writing essentially about herself, writing books about herself. So it's this kind of Ouroboros snake eating its tail infinite recursion thing.
Write what you know.
And as Lolly says, write what you know. Um, that was one of Bill Watterson's complaints about writing Calvin and Hobbes. That because Calvin had such a vivid imagination, he had to learn so much about dinosaurs. And, he had to know about these things because he would get letters of people who, that's not the way the Tyrannosaurus Rex looked. And he's like, okay, so I have to study up on Tyrannosaurus Rex. Um, yeah. So, Anne's taking special classes. It can be hard getting away from your friends. Um, in education, they tend to stratify people by capabilities. So the people who are excellent students get lumped together with the excellent students and they go on to study harder things. And the people who are only okay students get lumped with the other okay students and they do okay things. And then the poor students get lumped together and they do a bunch of remedial things, and it's it just goes down and down the rabbit hole. But the problem is that um you know, there's only two really good students in Avonlea out of their entire class, out of the entire school, because this was the typical one room schoolhouse where you had all of the kids of all of the years together, and the teacher teaches this stuff and then that stuff and then teach it, little bits to each one. And the thing is that there's only two students there who are really smart. And unfortunately for Anne, Diana isn't one of them. So it's her and Gilbert, and everyone else is just playing for third. And playing for third is not playing for third is not a good place. Playing for second isn't really a good place. But you have playing for second. You try and like get in the light of the person who's the superstar. Um, but there's Gilbert, and then there's Anne, and then there's the rest of the pack. And yeah, that's kind of separating Anne from Diana, and that's kind of sad. But those things happen in life, and maybe maybe Anne should apologize to Gilbert so he would stop ignoring her, because it's going to be the two of them. Because, as I said, everyone else is just like not even in the same league. So